Hello everyone, it's Harry, your host. So, the Federal Reserve just decided to pause rate cuts, holding interest rates steady. And on the surface, that might sound like a technical decision made far away in a boardroom. But the truth is, this choice shapes what you earn on your savings, what you pay on your debts, and how confident you feel about your financial plans this year. And here's the part that surprises a lot of people. A pause isn't neutral. It doesn't mean nothing is happening. It actually locks in the environment we're living in right now for better or worse. So yeah, understanding what this moment means can help you make calmer, smarter choices with your money instead of reacting out of stress or confusion. Before I go on, quick question for you. When you hear news about interest rates, does it usually make you feel more hopeful or more worried? Let me know in the comments. So let's talk about what just happened. The Fed decided to keep its main interest rate in a range of about 3.12 to 3.34%. This came after several rate cuts over the past year, and those cuts were meant to make borrowing easier and to keep the economy moving. But now the Fed is saying, okay, things are steady enough that we can pause and see how this plays out. And when Jerome Powell talked about it, he said the economy is on firm footing. That's his way of saying growth is solid. People are still working, and we're not seeing the kind of emergency signals that force quick action. But here's where it gets interesting. Inflation is still hanging around. It's lower than it was a couple years ago, but it's not fully back to where the Fed wants it. Prices are still rising faster than ideal, and that makes policymakers cautious. So, the Fed is kind of standing in the middle, looking at both sides, jobs on one side, inflation on the other, and saying, we don't want to push too hard either way right now. And you might be thinking, okay, but what does that mean for me? Like today, this month, this year? And that's the right question to ask because while markets react in seconds, households feel this stuff slowly through savings accounts, loan statements, and monthly budgets. Let's start with savings because this is one of the few areas where higher rates have actually been helpful. If you've got money sitting in a regular checking account earning almost nothing, this pause should be a little nudge to look around. High-yield savings accounts are still paying over 4% in many cases. That's not a guarantee forever, but right now it's real money on $10,000. That's hundreds of dollars a year you didn't have before just for being intentional about where your cash sits. Snorts. And I know some people say wealth 4% doesn't beat inflation. That's true, but it's still a lot better than 0.1%. This isn't about perfection. It's about improvement. And in a paused rate environment, banks aren't in a rush to slash those yields yet. So yeah, this is a window, not a lifetime opportunity, but a window worth paying attention to. Now, some of you might want more certainty, and that's where things like certificates of deposit come in. CDs let you lock in a rate for a set period of time. And what's nice right now is that there are even no penalty CDs out there. That means you get a decent rate, but if life changes and you need the money, you can pull it out without losing interest. It's not flashy, but it's steady, and for a lot of people, that's comforting. And speaking of steady, U.S. Treasuries are another option that doesn't get enough attention. Short-term Treasuries are paying solid yields, and the interest is exempt from state and local taxes. That matters more than people realize, especially if you live in a high-tax state. The pause in rate cuts means these yields aren't dropping overnight, so you actually have time to consider them instead of feeling rushed. Now, let's flip to the other side, debt, because this is where the pause feels heavier. Even though rates came down from their peak, borrowing is still expensive. Credit card interest rates are still hovering around 20% or more. That's not a typo. So if you're carrying a balance, this pause is basically the Fed saying, don't expect quick relief here. And that's frustrating. I know. I've been there staring at a statement and feeling like the balance barely moves even after making payments. This is why paying down high-interest debt is still one of the strongest moves you can make. There's no savings account that gives you a guaranteed 20% return. So paying off a car with that kind of rate is like earning that return instantly without market risk. It's not exciting, but it's powerful. Mortgages are another area people ask about all the time. Rates are lower than they were last year, but they're still not low by historical standards. 30-year fixed rates are hovering just above 6%. That's better, but not enough for everyone to refinance. And that's okay. A lot of people feel pressure to act just because rates moved. Well, you don't have to. Sometimes the smartest choice is waiting and focusing on what you can control, like extra principal payments or building an emergency fund. Auto loans are similar. Prices are still high, payments are still big, and rates haven't come down enough to make cars cheap again. So if you're holding off, you're not behind. You're being cautious. And in this environment, caution is not a bad word. Now, there's also a political layer here, and it's worth mentioning. President Trump has been vocal about wanting lower rates, arguing that cheaper borrowing helps growth and housing. Supporters say cutting rates more aggressively could keep the economy strong. Critics worry it could reignite inflation or hurt trust in the Fed's independence. And regardless of where you land on that debate, the reality is the Fed chose caution. It chose to pause. And historically, pauses like this are turning points. Sometimes they lead to more cuts later once inflation clearly cools. Other times they mark a longer stretch of steady rates. Right now, markets are betting on maybe 1 or 2 more cuts this year, not a flood of them. So planning as if rates will stay roughly where they are is probably more realistic than hoping for dramatic changes. So what does that mean for you practically? It means leaning into what works in this environment. It means shopping for better savings rates instead of letting inertia win. It means being honest about debt and prioritizing the most expensive balances. It means not stretching too far on big purchases just because rates are slightly better than last year. And here's something people don't talk about enough. Emotionally, a pause can actually reduce anxiety. When rates are changing fast, it feels like you're always behind, like you missed something. A pause gives you space to breathe and plan. You don't need to predict to Fed perfectly. You just need a strategy that works even if nothing changes for a while. I've seen this play out in my own life. Periods where I stopped reacting to headlines and focused on simple steps, better savings, less debt, more clarity. Those were the periods where my finances actually improved, not because I timed anything perfectly, but because I stayed consistent. So as we keep moving through this year, remember this. A pause doesn't mean pause your life. It means adjust to the reality in front of you. Rates are higher than the past, lower than the peak, and stable for now. That stability can be used. You can earn something on your cash. You can make progress on debt, and you can make decisions without rushing. And guess what? The biggest advantage most people have right now isn't predicting the next cut. It's staying calm while everyone else overreacts. If you can do that, you're already ahead. So, yeah, keep asking questions, keep learning, and keep making small, steady moves. That's how you make this kind of moment work for you, even when the Fed decides to stand still. Thank you for watching.